Today we got a package from Darwin from Wyoming, and Darwin sent an iPhone 6s Plus that doesn't respond to touch. After a screen repair, the device no longer responds to touch, and this is for the iPhone 6s Plus. That's all the information that we have. Now what I did is I already took the iPhone 6s Plus apart. The first thing we're going to do is a physical inspection on the board to see if there's anything obvious that we may be able to figure out. Right now there are a lot of filters under the FEC connector that are responsible for touch. A lot of the phones that we get in here, when a user or customer tries to pry the screen out of the board, what they end up doing is ripping some components from under the FEC connector. And from the first look, that's what I see here. Okay, so look at that. We see a loose component here. We see one here. I see one over here, one over here. I mean, let's take a look under this. We are missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 components. So what happened is the person who tried to change the screen on this phone, they pried the connector of the board, and at the same time they ended up prying a lot of the components that exist on the board here. These components are extremely tiny and difficult to work with. So right now we are dealing with 9 missing components that we have to solder back on. After this is done, touch should be restored to a working condition. I do not want to take this piece out yet because there are a lot of components that we can use. We cannot tell which is a filter and which is not. So we're going to have to test with a multimeter. And what we're going to have to do is look at the circuit diagram or the board diagram to see what this missing component is, what that missing component is. So the first thing I want to do is take a look at the board. 1 we have, 2 we have, 3 and 4 are empty, so we do not care about those. 5th one is a filter. So we need to solder this filter on. We're going to skip the capacitor, and then we're going to solder on the filter. So we need 2 filters, 3 filters, 4 filters, 5 filters. So basically we need to solder on 5 filters. We do have component 1, 2, component 3 and 4 are empty. The 5th one is a filter. We skip 2, and this one is a filter. So right now I do see some loose filters here on this rubber thing. These components are extremely tiny. This is the 01005 SMD component. So this is a filter.
Hi, I wanted to see how much it would cost to replace the screen for a Samsung Galaxy J3.
Just one moment.
Thank you.
Now we are dealing with an extremely tight area and very, very small components. So the slightest shake of hand can mess a lot of things up. Okay, that should be enough. We'll use our hot tweezers to solder this on. So that component is in place. We have to skip 2. These 2 are capacitors. I'm not interested in soldering the capacitors right now. I'm just interested in soldering the filters so we can make the circuit continuous and make touch work again. So we're gonna skip 1, 2, and we're gonna solder here. So let's find a filter that we can solder here. Okay, so that's the second one. So we put one filter here, there's a capacitor here, a capacitor here. We did not put them yet. We put this filter here. Right now I'm only interested in putting the filters so we can get touch to work. And right next to the filter, what do we have? Let's take a look at our board diagram. So 1, 2 we have, 3, 4 are empty. The fifth one is a filter, we put it there. We skipped the capacitor, and we put one filter. And right next to the filter we have 2 more filters. So we're gonna add 2 more filters here. Capacitor, then filter. Okay. That's the third one. Let's see, is it solid in place? And yes, yes. So we installed this one, this one, this one, and this one. So let's add some solder onto those 2 pads, and we can look for a filter to solder on here. So let's find a filter and put it on here. We're gonna look at the board diagram again for the 6 Plus because that's where we are getting our components from. Let's look for this component here, this one. This one here. Solid, 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 solid. So our touch should work. Now there's also one other missing component. Based on the board diagram, we do have a missing filter here. So let's go ahead and get a filter and put it here. Okay, beautiful. Everything is solid, everything is nice. Let's do a quick cleanup. So I think it's time to try our screen and see if touch is fixed. All right, so we're gonna connect our battery and let's test. Hopefully touch is working after all that work. Yes. Yes, touch is working. Home button is working. Awesome. So the phone is fixed. The job was a little bit tedious. We are dealing with an extremely small area, and the components are one of the smallest on the board, the 01005 SMD components. I was holding the hot tweezers with 2 hands, so my hand doesn't shake, because the slightest shake can knock off other components on the board. The way I was working with the tweezers was like this. So I was as steady as possible, and you can tell from the way I was soldering the components. End result is a success. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like always, go ahead and like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next video.